I've been getting a lot of requests lately to create a Guys I Finally video about a horror game. And though horror games aren't exactly what I find to be the pinnacle of video games, I cannot deny their cultural impact each time a new viral horror game hits the market. Games like Bendy and the Ink Machine, Five Nights at Freddy's, and Doki Doki Literature Club. I have not played any of these games listed, however the fact that I know about each one of them extensively says a lot about how the internet will devour a good horror game piece by piece until there's no one on the internet that does know about them. But before any of these games were probably even an idea, there was the proto-viral horror game called Slender, a game that would pave the way for horror games going forward and give notoriety to what stands as my generation's most revered and widespread urban mythos, a game that spawned movies, books, shitty Roblox minigames, and terrible, horrible fanfictions.
Oh, Slender, oh.
However, before we even get to that point, we have to start with the free indie game that changed the horror game genre going forward for what seems like forever. So before I can get to these on this channel, I should start with the first. So let's start looking for pages and play some Slender. To preface everything I'm about to say, you need to understand I am picking up halfway through the Slender Man timeline. Even though 8 pages helped rocket Slender Man to infamy, there was so much more content prior to this game. ARGs, short stories, references in other media. Hell, 8 pages wasn't even the first Slender Man game to be released. However, that game looks like complete ass, so I'm not going to talk about it. Or anything else I just mentioned. This video would be way too long if I did that. I'm going to start here. Arguably when Slender Man's journey through the media grinder started. There were about 3 to 4 real vital milestones in the journey of this cryptid, and I'll be covering each one. And I guess I should warn you that we will cover the traumatic stuff too, so if you're not into that, I'll give you a heads up before I get there and we can skip it together. Slender the 8 pages was simply known as Slender when it first released June of 2012. This free-to-play first-person horror game took the internet by storm. There was no escaping Slender. The game is pretty simple. You're collecting pages scattered throughout a scary, foggy forest that has a very odd landscape, where there's just a restroom in the middle of the forest with no toilets or sinks in it, just a wooden chair, big rocks, and a weird racquetball court. The whole time you're exploring, Slender Man is hunting you down. With each page you collect, the more frequently he teleports and attempts to kidnap you. Of course, the first time you encounter the Slender Man, you're in for a little spook. But every time after that, it's just kind of annoying. Sometimes you'll die and never even see him. He kind of just appears around you and kills you. The game's not too fun after the first 15 minutes, but I'd give Slender the 8 pages a straight 5 out of 10. It's free, so I'm not going to act like I deserved a better experience. It's not like I paid for one. Regardless of how I feel about this game, Slender was a hit among YouTubers back then. I don't think there was a YouTuber who wasn't playing Slender, and since most kids did not own computers that were capable of playing games, they devoured those videos. Hell, people are still making Slender gameplay videos, which just goes to show that kids love watching other people play horror games. I should know, I was a kid at one point. It's interesting to see how children, like actual baby children, reacted to something so resoundingly violent and frightening like the Slender Man, or more recently things like Momo or Five Nights at Freddy's. It's like kids are nullified to it. And I guess it's thanks to content creators to understand that scary things attract the views of children. Ew. They make it accessible for literal toddlers to watch. It's odd to me, but I guess I'm getting sidetracked. Just understand that going forward, Slender Man did not belong solely to the creepypasta-loving crowd anymore. Slender Man was a viral hit. I vividly remember many kids and adults alike wearing Slender Man morph suits that Halloween, and I can't even remember how many short films about Slender Man I watched back in 2012 and 13. Soon after, the general population of people stopped caring and mostly forgot about the internet-born famous cryptid. And I don't think it's a coincidence that around that time, a new Slender Man game came out, Slender The Arrival, which was released on March 26, 2013, just 1 year after 8 pages. And to be honest, this game is nothing special. Not too many people talk about this game 7 years later. It makes the same mistakes that a lot of horror movies / games make in their sequels. They convolute the story with backstories that we don't care about and then add other monsters that play no significant role to the story at all. It's a very dull mess of a game. It looks pretty in some areas and it looks like Fallout 76 at its worst in other areas. I'd give it a 3.3 repeating out of 10. It's not worth the time or money. Why I bring this game up at all is to mark almost the exact point in time where Slender Man becomes no longer a scary campfire story but now a corporate money machine that can be plastered on the likes of phone cases, t-shirts, and stickers for edgy 12 to 15-year-olds to buy and wear. Slender Man was no longer in the safe hands of people who want to see the idea prosper but now is in a place where ideas die. Or worse, be used for sick, ulterior motives.
Are you still there?
Yes.
Hi, sir. So, are you with this 12-year-old female?
Yeah, she said she's having trouble breathing. She said she was stabbed multiple times.
Stabbed multiple times?
Yeah.
Police say the so-called friends of the victim planned to kill her for months. They were obsessed with a character called Slender Man.
The criminal complaint suggests Geiser and Anissa Wire were obsessed with Slender Man, and the only way to prove themselves was to kill someone.
It would not be the entire Slender Man timeline if I did not discuss the 2014 Waukesha stabbing. To put it bluntly, two 12-year-old girls were convinced by the Slender Man that if they killed another 12-year-old girl, that Slender Man would deem them worthy of being his proxies, and they could ultimately stop Slender Man from hurting others, or so they say. The victim was stabbed 19 times and left for dead in the forest. Fortunately, the victim did survive, and the two girls are being rehabilitated in mental institutions, and probably will be tried as adults soon enough if the justice system thinks it's the right thing to do. Now I could spiral into a 30-minute rant about how some children just suck and do terrible, horrible things to other children, and that's not at fault to whatever media they're consuming, but any person with common sense should know this by now. Kids are dumb, but most kids are not dumb enough to stab other kids, even if convinced by the Slender Man. If your kid tries to kill other beings, they are going to find a reason to hurt someone else no matter what. It's an unfortunate truth to this world, and I hope that every adolescent gets the attention they need so things like this don't happen to other people. After this event, Slender Man was presumably over in a way. It almost becomes a taboo subject, and I remember being in middle school and Slender Man was banned from school. You couldn't talk about it, draw him, watch anything about him, and that's around the last time I cared or thought about the Slender Man. It's a very tragic end to such an important internet milestone, but no internet creepy story has worth over innocent human life. Even now, I hope I'm being respectful to all families involved in this tragedy, and this should be the end of it. You know, of course, there's still some cameos here and there, and inspiration is taken from Slender Man's likeness, but it's very rare that you see Slender Man blatantly in any media. I mean, realistically, who would want to profit off a tragedy? That's a terrible, low down, and unethical. This will be the last stop on our metaphorical ride with Slender Man. Though I thought there was fuel left in the tank for more cameos and such, this movie completely derailed the Slender Man. Absolutely, without a doubt, stopped him from ever returning back to form pre-tragedy. You might be surprised to learn that Slender Man is not in the public domain, meaning you cannot use his literal likeness in any form of media that would make a profit, because the media rights are owned by some production company called Mythology Entertainment, known for the remake of Suspiria and that one Jack Black movie that literally no one remembers even though it just came out 2 years ago. Spoiler alert, the company is now dead and the media rights to Slender Man are up in the air. It's very disappointing. So what did Mythology Entertainment do with the media rights to Slender Man? Did they watch a bunch of short films that were already made? Draw inspiration from the well of innovative content creators making quality short videos for this cryptid that the internet loved so much for several years? Maybe lean in on the fact that this Slender Man movie is coming out a few years too late and pull on the nostalgia strings for people who just turned 20-ish to relive their elementary/middle school years. I mean, imagine seeing the Slender Man on the big screen set during the era where most kids got their first cell phones or just activated their first Facebook account. counts? Or do you just make a dime a dozen PG-13 flick that can air on Freeform's 31 Nights of Halloween? Well, judging by this image, what did you think happened? Now, I don't really want to go into an in-depth review about this movie. This video is about how events impacted the Slender Man timeline, not so much about the specific details of the events. But gun to my head, if someone forced me to review this movie in under 2 minutes, it probably sounds something like this. Slender Man 2018 is by far one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen in my life. I am not being hyperbolic, this movie is a piece of shit. The 4 main characters are so bland and boring, I did not care about one single person in this movie. If they all died, I'd be fine. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if they all did die, because by the end of the movie, all of the main characters just kind of stopped being on the screen. I'm not sure if we're supposed to assume they died because all of their endings are so ambiguous. For example, this one gets sucked through a window. Does she die? I don't fucking know. The last time we see this character, she's just staring out of the window. And the last character to die gets swallowed by Tree Slender Man, which is a power I did not know he had. And speaking of Slender Man, he's probably in this movie for about 3 minutes tops. That leaves the rest of the hour and 20 minutes for these 4 children to try their best and carry this movie solely on their acting skills, and they are failing.
We are the emotional
You're sorry?
climax.
That's it? That's my sister! Why would you do that?
There is no fun to be had in this movie. It was a literal chore to watch. And by far, the worst part of the movie is the end. So all the girls die, and there's a narration by one of the girls' little sisters as the camera pans in on a picture of the 4 missing girls. And then she says something along the lines of, "Don't speak Slender Man's name, and especially don't be a messed up person and do messed up things in the name of the Slender Man." Obviously alluding to the tragedy we just spoke about. Oh, fuck you, you made the fucking movie, don't make me feel bad for watching it. You really want people to stop doing shitty things in the name of the Slender Man? Don't make a full-length piece of shit movie about it. Slender Man 2018 gets a 1 out of 10 because that's as low as my ratings go. I do have one theory about why this movie is so bad. I mean, it's obviously recut or re-edited. It's evident in one weird scene where the girls are looking through their missing friend's bedroom trying to look for clues as to why she went missing. One of the girls says the police must have taken her laptop, and the girls are visibly upset about this. And then just a few seconds later, that laptop is in her closet. And then there's this ending shot that did not feel natural to the rest of the movie at all. There's this out-of-place narration that just screams to me that Sony, their distributor, chimed in and said, "Hey, tone it down on the scariness, please. Remember, our audience is 4-year-olds who like to watch Slender Man finger family videos." Maybe we can chalk this all up to bad writing, but I doubt it. It also feels like this movie was gorier at some point. In the trailer, there's a scene where an eye is stabbed, and that's nowhere to be found in the movie. And there's another scene in the trailer where it seems like one of the girls is about to harm herself with a scalpel during science class, and that's also another scene we do not see in the movie. I'm 100% positive these scenes were scrapped because the parents of the children who were involved in the stabbing were very much against this movie. And I think Sony second-guessed themselves and pulled back at the last second on the killing/violence stuff to stray away from any semblance of the tragedy. I honestly think the stabbing led Sony to believe a Slender Man movie was profitable. I mean, why else would a Slender Man movie come out almost 6 years after the peak of Slender Man? This odd timing of the release is only one of several reasons why this movie ultimately failed. Not financially, but reception-wise. I have not seen one good review about Slender Man, and that's rightfully so. It's upsetting because the creepypasta website, and really the internet as a whole, is literally filled to the brim with better and more detailed stories than the Slender Man. I wholeheartedly believe that Sony ruined the chance for any of those stories to be made into good, feature-length films by companies who would actually do a good job of bringing creepypastas, or SCPs, or YouTube ARGs to the big screen because Slender Man failed to open that door. Not because Slender Man is a boring antagonist, but because Sony and Mythology Entertainment completely fumbled the ball for community-based horror icons to be turned into leads in films. Because now those movies will forever be second-class movies reserved for C- celebrities and Vine/TikTok stars turned actors and actresses. F*** you, Sony. This is really the end year. It's 2020, it's been almost 8 years since Slender Man's peak and 11 years since Slender Man's conception. And though the last 4 to 5 years were bleak, I'd say that Slender Man had a great run as the internet's mascot in a way. There's nothing / no one that I can think of that really filled the role that Slender Man filled back in his heyday. The scariest part about Slender Man was being just young enough and naive enough to believe he might be real. Slender Man walked the line of reality, mythology, and internet fame. You were scared of him the same way you'd be scared of real-life fears, but you couldn't stop seeking out more information about him on the web. And the internet played the role of your big brother or uncle and led you to believe he was real. It was truly a monumental commemorative campfire story that got too big and caught the wind of people who'd rather ruin the experience for everyone else than be part of that community. Slender Man wasn't a corporate boardroom idea or a focus group created monster. It was created by people like you and me. Normal, everyday people just trying to make the world a little more interesting, and they sure as did. And I thank you, internet, for that. Bye. I love you. Happy Halloween.